Excuse me, you're in my seat, Zara, Brooks said calmly, holding her boarding pass steady, despite the tremor in her voice. The white passenger in seat 2A. Her seat didn't even look up from his laptop. Welcome to our channel. If you're new here, you've just joined a community dedicated to truth, justice, and survival. Show some love by clicking the like and subscribe button. Before we dive deeper into this story, drop a comment where you are watching from and what time it is for you right now. Maxwell Whitfield, a man whose salt and pepper hair and expensive suit screamed corporate authority, finally glanced at the child with undisguised annoyance. There must be some mistake, he said, his tone suggesting the only mistake was this child's presence in first class. The Boeing 737's first-class cabin hummed with tension as flight attendant Olivia Martinez approached, her practiced smile faltering as she assessed the situation. Without checking Zara's boarding pass, she immediately turned to the girl. "Sweetie, let me help you find your seat in economy." "But this is my seat," Zara insisted, holding out her boarding pass. 2A. Olivia's eyes flickered over the pass, but she didn't actually read it. Her smile tightened as she leaned down, speaking in the slow, exaggerated tone adults often use with children they believe are confused. "I understand you might be mixed up, honey. First time flying alone. These big numbers can be tricky." "I'm not confused," Zara replied, her voice steady but soft. She was used to this, adults who saw her skin and age before they saw her competence. "My boarding pass clearly shows 2A. First class. Window seat." Maxwell sighed dramatically, making a show of pausing his work. "Look, I don't mean to be rude, but I have an important presentation to prepare." He gestured vaguely toward economy. "Perhaps there's been a computer error." It happens. Around them, the ambient sounds of the first-class cabin shifted. A businessman lowered his newspaper, watching over the edge. A woman with a pearl necklace clutched it reflexively, as if Zara's presence threatened her jewelry. A younger couple exchanged uncomfortable glances, unsure whether to intervene. "I've been flying since I was 4, Zara said, reaching into her jacket pocket and pulling out a sleek metal card. "I'm a global elite member. This seat was purchased 3 weeks ago." Maxwell's eyebrows shot up at the sight of the card, one even he didn't possess. For a moment, doubt flickered across his face, quickly replaced by suspicion. "That can't possibly be yours." Olivia shifted, uncomfortably caught between protocol and prejudice. "Perhaps we should check the manifest," she suggested, though her tone made it clear whose side she was on. A young white man across the aisle, barely in his 20s with fashionably tousled hair, had begun recording discreetly with his phone. "This is wild," he muttered to his companion. "I have the confirmation email as well," Zara said, opening her tablet and navigating to her inbox with practiced ease. She turned the screen toward Olivia, who now seemed trapped between her assumptions and the mounting evidence before her. Maxwell's face hardened. "Anyone can fake an email. That card is probably your father's." He looked around for support from his fellow passengers, finding several nodding faces. "Kids these days know all the computer tricks." "My father is in economy," Zara replied calmly. "He believes in humility, even when you can afford luxury, a principle your generation might benefit from learning." The cabin went silent. Even Olivia's professional veneer cracked at the composed comeback from an 11-year-old girl. Zara Brooks emerged from economy class, where he deliberately booked himself. A lesson in humility he taught his daughter despite their billions. His 6'3" frame filled the aisle as he moved with controlled precision toward the confrontation. "My daughter's seat was purchased weeks ago," Isaiah said, his electrical engineer's mind calculating the situation with the same precision he once used to design circuit boards. "She has the documentation." Maxwell's face reddened. "I'm a titanium member, 17 years. I don't fly economy." He turned to Olivia with the confidence of a man accustomed to getting his way. Surely we can resolve this reasonably. The child can't possibly need first-class workspace. The word child dripped with such condescension that several passengers looked up from their devices. Among them, Victoria Harrington, an elegant woman in her 60s, with sharp gray eyes that missed nothing, watched the scene unfold with particular interest. "Sir, Miss Brooks has a confirmed reservation," Olivia said weakly, finally examining the boarding pass. "Then check again," Maxwell demanded. His voice carried the authority of someone who'd never been told no until today. Isaiah placed a gentle hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Zara has every right to the seat she purchased. Perhaps Mr. Whitfield." "Maxwell Whitfield," he replied, as if the name itself should command respect. "Perhaps Mr. Whitfield, the airline, can offer you an upgrade on the next flight if you're uncomfortable with your assigned seat." A flight attendant from economy, Ryan Phillips, had come forward, drawn by the commotion. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his eyes darting between the players in this unfolding drama. "This gentleman is in my daughter's assigned seat," Isaiah explained calmly. "Seat 2A. Ryan took Zara's boarding pass, and Maxwell's comparing them carefully. "Mr. Whitfield, your assigned seat is actually 12C, Economy Plus." Economy. The word exploded from Maxwell like a slur. "There's clearly been a mistake. Check again. I specifically requested an upgrade using my points." "I've checked the system, sir. The upgrade request wasn't approved due to the flight being fully booked in first class," Ryan explained, somehow maintaining his professional demeanor. "Miss Brooks's reservation was confirmed 3 weeks ago." Isaiah's expression remained neutral, but his eyes communicated volumes to his daughter. Standing your ground doesn't require raising your voice. It requires knowing your worth. Victoria Harrington rose from her aisle seat across from the dispute. "Perhaps I might offer a solution?" She said, her voice pleasant, but carrying an undertone that suggested this wasn't really a suggestion. "Mr. Whitfield can have my seat, and the young lady keeps hers." Maxwell hesitated, caught between his prejudice and the graceful exit being offered. The cabin watched in silence as he gathered his belongings, muttering about procedures and proper channels. "That's very generous of you," Ms. Isaiah began. "Harrington." "Victoria Harrington," she replied with a smile that seemed to hold secrets. "It's no trouble at all. I find aisle seats more convenient anyway." As they settled into their rearranged seats, Zara caught her father's eye from the economy section. His small nod conveyed volumes. "Stand your ground, Sparrow." Victoria settled into her new seat beside Maxwell, who was still visibly fuming. "Quite the commotion over a seat," she remarked casually. "It's the principal," Maxwell replied stiffly. "Standards are slipping everywhere." "Indeed," Victoria agreed, though her slight smile suggested she might not be referring to the same standards. "I often find things aren't quite what they appear on the surface." Victoria paused, studying Maxwell with the practiced eye of someone who had spent decades evaluating people. "You know," she said quietly, so only he could hear, "I once worked with a man at Morgan Stanley who insisted he'd never report to someone younger than him. He ended up missing the opportunity to work with the analyst, who later became their youngest managing director." She let that sit before adding, "Assumptions can be costly." Maxwell's jaw tightened, but something in Victoria's tone, a blend of confidence and insider knowledge, made him look at her more carefully. "You're in venture capital," he guessed. "Among other things," she replied cryptically. Zara pulled out her tablet, opening a complex coding interface that immediately absorbed her attention. She didn't notice Maxwell's lingering glance, the mixture of wounded pride and curiosity that flashed across his face as he observed the child whose presence had so disrupted his sense of entitlement. The young man who had been recording put his phone away, but not before sending the video to several friends with the caption, "First-class drama." Rich white dude, just got schooled by literal child. The engines roared to life, vibrating through the cabin as the plane prepared for takeoff. Zara's fingers danced across her tablet screen, adjusting parameters in an algorithm designed to recognize reading pattern disruptions in dyslexic children. The latest update would reduce false positives by 27%, potentially helping thousands of students avoid misdiagnosis. On-screen, colorful neural network visualizations pulsed and shifted as the algorithm processed sample reading patterns. Where traditional dyslexia screening focused on error rates, MindScape's approach analyzed the specific patterns in those errors: letter reversals, phonetic substitutions, contextual confusions, and mapped them against a database of cognitive processing styles. The result wasn't just identification, but understanding, creating a foundation for personalized learning approaches. For a moment, the screen blurred before Zara's eyes. She blinked away unexpected tears, remembering her mother explaining these patterns to struggling students in her Detroit classroom. "You're not broken," Amara would tell them. "Your brain is wired differently, and that's actually a kind of superpower once you learn how to use it." Now, millions of children would hear that message through MindScape's adaptive interface. In Seat 3B, now occupied by Maxwell, the man's gaze kept drifting toward the child who had humiliated him. He opened his laptop, but instead of preparing his presentation, he found himself typing Zara Brooks into a search engine. The results made his stomach clench. 11-year-old tech prodigy revolutionizes educational software. MindScape reaches 3 million users globally. Youngest billionaire in tech. How Zara Brooks built an empire from her Detroit basement. AlphaTech. Offer rejected. Brooks chooses educational access over billion-dollar buyout. There she was, the same solemn-faced girl standing beside her invention at technology conferences, accepting awards, speaking articulately about neural networks and adaptive learning patterns. A child worth more than he would earn in 10 lifetimes. Maxwell's finger hovered over his phone. He glanced at Victoria, who seemed absorbed in her book, then dialed a number. "Greg." "It's Max. You know that competitor you mentioned at the strategy meeting, Brooks? I'm on her flight right now." He lowered his voice. "No, not him. His daughter. The actual founder." He listened for a moment. "Yes, I'm certain. What do you want me to do?" The voice on the other end spoke for nearly a minute. Maxwell's expression shifted from surprise to understanding to something darker. "That seems extreme," he said quietly. "She's just a kid." Another pause. "Yes, I understand the market position. But..." He was cut off again. "Of course I'm committed. Another interruption. Fine, I'll handle it." As he ended the call, Maxwell caught Victoria watching him, her expression unreadable. He quickly turned away, a flicker of shame crossing his features before hardening into resolve. In economy class, Isaiah found himself seated next to a talkative older man, returning home from a business trip. "That your daughter up in first?" the man asked, having observed the earlier confrontation. "Yes," Isaiah replied simply. "Traveling for vacation. Business, actually. My daughter has meetings in San Francisco." The man chuckled. "Take your daughter to work day." "That's nice?" Isaiah smiled politely. "Something like that." In the row behind them, Victoria Harrington had taken the seat she'd been assigned in her original booking. From her vantage point, she could observe both Zara in first class and Isaiah in economy. She pulled out a small notebook and made a brief note, then returned it to her handbag. "Excuse me," she said to Isaiah, leaning forward. "I couldn't help but notice your interaction earlier." "Isaiah Brooks, correct?" Isaiah turned surprise evident on his face. Yes, I thought so. Your daughter's educational platform is quite remarkable. I've followed her progress with great interest. You know of MindScape? Isaiah asked cautiously. I make it my business to know about innovations that matter, Victoria replied, particularly when they're reshaping industries against significant resistance. Isaiah studied her carefully. And what industry are you in, Ms. Harrington Investment? Though these days I'm more interested in ensuring ethical practices than returns. She handed him a business card. We should talk while we're in San Francisco. I believe I have information that might interest you. Isaiah examined the card. Victoria Harrington, former Senior Vice President, Strategic Investments, AlphaTech Ventures. His eyes widened slightly as he made the connection. AlphaTech, he said quietly. The same company that tried to acquire MindScape 6 months ago. Victoria nodded almost imperceptibly. The very same. Back in first class, Maxwell was finishing his call. Yes, I understand. I'll handle it. He ended the call, his expression troubled as he glanced again at Zara. The plane had reached cruising altitude when Maxwell excused himself, making his way to the lavatory. Instead of returning directly to his seat, he stopped in the galley, using the plane's Wi-Fi to make another call. Airport security. I need to report a potential security concern on Flight 738. There's a minor traveling with what I believe to be fraudulent documentation, possibly identity theft, certainly inappropriate access to financial instruments. I'm concerned about who might be controlling her. He paused, listening to the response. Yes, I understand it's serious. That's why I'm calling. This goes beyond airline policy. We're potentially looking at financial crimes using a minor as cover. Another pause. Brooks. Zara Brooks, seat 2A. Her supposed father is in economy, which itself raises questions about their relationship. I believe authorities should be waiting when we land. 20 minutes later, Captain Sullivan's voice crackled through the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a situation that requires us to return to the nearest airport. Please remain calm and seated. Zara's stomach dropped, not from altitude, but from the collective turn of hundreds of eyes toward her. If you're ready to see how this young genius fights back against organized injustice, hit that subscribe button now and ring the notification bell. This story is just getting started. Have you ever witnessed discrimination in public spaces? How did you respond? Share your experience in the comments below. Isaiah Brooks had given up everything for his daughter's vision. The senior electrical engineering position at Ford Motor Company, the stability of a 6-figure salary traded for the uncertainty of a startup that began in their basement. Their modest Corktown home had been mortgaged twice. The dining room converted to a server room. Extension cords snaking through hallways like digital arteries pumping life into Zara's creation. Corktown, Detroit's oldest neighborhood, had seen its share of dreamers. Once home to Irish immigrants who built the city's factories, then abandoned during decades of urban decline, now slowly revitalizing through people like the Brooks family, who saw possibility where others saw only decay. Their 1920s brick home sat on a tree-lined street just west of downtown, its worn exterior concealing the technological marvel developing inside. I fixed it, Zara announced, at 6:00 a.m., uploading the patch that would instantly improve the experience for 47,000 special needs students across 47 countries. The boy in Mumbai would wake up to a smoother, more responsive learning experience. He'd never know that a girl his age had stayed up all night to shave off 3/10 of a second from his frustration. As they packed for San Francisco, Isaiah noticed Zara carefully folding a worn piece of paper into her jacket pocket. Amara's letter. His wife, taken by cancer 2 years ago, had been a Detroit public school teacher who'd recognized their daughter's genius when 4-year-old Zara had reprogrammed their smart TV to display educational content instead of commercials. Your mind is your superpower, but your heart is your compass. The letter read, "Don't let anyone convince you to trade one for the other." Amara had lived just long enough to see MindScape's first million users to know her daughter would change the world. She'd died believing that merit would eventually triumph over prejudice. She'd never know how wrong she was, or how right. At night, after her father thought she was asleep, Zara would sometimes take out that letter and trace her mother's handwriting with her fingertip. "I'm trying, Mom," she'd whisper into the darkness. "But sometimes it's so hard when they look at me like I'm nothing." Tonight was one of those nights. As distant sirens wailed somewhere in Detroit's streets, Zara sat cross-legged on her bed, her mother's letter illuminated by the glow of her tablet. Tomorrow's pitch to Billionaire Ventures loomed like a mountain to climb. Not the technical aspects, those she could handle blindfolded, but the judgment, the scrutiny, the subtle ways investors communicated that an 11-year-old black girl from Detroit couldn't possibly have created what she claimed. "I'm scared," she admitted to the empty room, a confession she'd never make to her father. "What if I mess up? What if everything we've built falls apart because I can't make them see past what I look like?" Her voice cracked slightly. "I need you, Mom." The house creaked and settled, offering no answer. Zara wiped away tears with the back of her hand, frustrated by this momentary weakness. She was Zara Brooks's daughter. She didn't have the luxury of doubt. "Okay," she whispered to herself, straightening her shoulders. "Do what Mom taught you. Break it down into pieces." She opened her tablet and began methodically reviewing her presentation, identifying potential objections and preparing responses. By the time exhaustion finally pulled her into sleep, the tablet still clutched against her chest. Her fear had hardened into determination. Zara Brooks had been the heart of their family, fierce, brilliant, unstoppable. When doctors diagnosed her with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, she'd used her remaining time to prepare Zara for a world that would try to diminish her. "They'll say you're too young," she told Zara during one of their final hospital visits. "They'll say you're too black. They'll say you're too female. What they're really saying is, you're too threatening to their comfortable assumptions." Isaiah had found them one afternoon. Amara propped up in her hospital bed, Zara curled beside her, both working on Zara's early coding project. "What are my two favorite women plotting now?" he'd asked. "Revolution," Amara had replied with a smile. "Educational revolution." She had spent 20 years teaching in Detroit's underfunded public schools, watching brilliant minds go unrecognized because they didn't learn in standardized ways. Children labeled as troubled or slow when they were simply processing information differently. Year after year, she fought the system, advocating for alternative teaching methods, creating her own adaptive materials, staying late to work with students who needed different approaches. "The system isn't built for diversity of mind," she would tell her fellow teachers. "It's built for compliance and conformity. And we wonder why we're losing our most creative thinkers." When Zara showed early signs of exceptional intelligence, Amara was determined that her daughter would use her gifts to change the very system that failed so many children. By age 6, Zara was helping her mother design learning materials for students with different processing styles. By 8, she was coding simple programs to make those materials interactive. The day Amara died, Zara had sat with her code for hours, not typing, just staring at the screen. Then at 3 a.m., Isaiah found her furiously working, tears streaming down her face. The dyslexia recognition algorithm, she explained without looking up. Mom said it needed to be more sensitive to cultural differences in language processing. She was right. I fixed it. That morning, MindScape's effectiveness for non-native English speakers jumped by 42%. Grief transformed into purpose. Now, 2 years later, they were heading to San Francisco to secure funding that would bring MindScape to every underserved school district in America. Amara's dream made manifest through her daughter's brilliance. Isaiah watched Zara tuck the letter safely away. "She would be so proud of you, Sparrow." Zara nodded, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "She told me to fly higher than anyone expected. That's what I'm doing." "Higher and farther," Isaiah agreed, gently touching the locket around his neck that contained Amara's photo. "Let's go change the world, just like she wanted." Detroit Metropolitan Wayne County Airport orchestrated its morning symphony. Business people gulping overpriced coffee, families corralling children, the eternal dance of departure and arrival. The Brooks moved through TSA pre-check with practiced efficiency, their routine honed by monthly flights to investor meetings, conferences, and school implementations. "Daddy, look," a 6-year-old girl pointed at Zara with unabashed excitement. "It's the MindScape lady. She taught me to read." The girl's mother looked mortified, then amazed. "Oh my God, you're Zara Brooks. My daughter has severe dyslexia. She went from crying over books to reading Harry Potter. We owe you everything." Zara knelt to the girl's level. "You don't owe me anything. You did the hard work. What's your favorite part of Harry Potter? When Hermione shows everyone she's the smartest." "Mine too." Zara smiled. "Keep reading. Your brain is magic just like hers. But not everyone in the airport saw magic." Maxwell Whitfield, Senior VP at Next Level Educational Systems, stood at a nearby gate, watching the interaction with calculating eyes. His company had just been acquired by AlphaTech Ventures, the most powerful investment firm in Silicon Valley. He'd been in a strategy meeting 2 weeks ago where they discussed neutralizing competitive threats. He'd thought it meant improving their product. He pulled out his phone, texting his boss, "Zara Brooks on my flight to SF. Same plane, first class." The response was immediate. "Perfect. Await instructions." Maxwell frowned slightly. The tone seemed ominous, almost predatory. For a moment, he watched the young girl interacting with her fan, the genuine warmth in her expression, as she encouraged the child. Something uncomfortable stirred in his chest, a distant memory of his own nephew's struggles with reading, the frustration and tears. His phone buzzed again. Project Elimination green light. Instructions incoming. Project Elimination. The name itself sent a chill through him. This didn't sound like market competition. It sounded like something else entirely. Something he hadn't signed up for. Before he could dwell on it further, another text arrived with detailed instructions. His discomfort deepened as he read, but he quickly suppressed it. This was business. Sometimes business required aggressive tactics. Besides, the decision wasn't his to make. He was just following directives. That's what good executives did. That's how he'd risen through the ranks. As the interaction concluded, Gabriela Ramirez, MindScape's 38-year-old Hispanic COO, joined them at the gate. Her tailored pantsuit and no-nonsense demeanor contrasted with Zara's more understated appearance in a simple blazer over jeans. The DNR team confirmed our 2 p.m. slot. Gabriela informed them, her slight accent adding texture to her precise speech. Their educational portfolio manager will be joining. ¿Cómo te sientes, pequeña genio? She asked Zara quietly. ¿Lista para conquistar Silicon Valley? Zara smiled at the familiar question. As ready as I'll ever be, Gabby. Did they say anything about our proposal? Isaiah asked. Only that they were impressed by the preliminary data, Gabriela replied. Especially the results from the Detroit pilot program. Maxwell, pretending to check his boarding pass, strained to hear their conversation. Detroit pilot program. He made a mental note to have his team investigate. Boarding for Flight 738 to San Francisco will begin shortly, announced the gate agent. We'll start with our premium passengers and those needing special assistance. That's us, Isaiah said to Zara. Ready, Sparrow. Zara nodded, squaring her small shoulders like a soldier preparing for battle. First class for focus, then straight to the meeting. No distractions. Maxwell watched them line up, his expression unreadable. As he joined the boarding queue behind them, he received another text. Find weakness. Create opening. Project elimination is go. Flight 738 began boarding at 7:45 a.m. First class Group A. Zara walked down the jet bridge with her usual composure, the custom-tailored blazer making her look like a miniature executive, which in essence she was. Seat 2A, window first class. She'd insisted on flying economy until Isaiah explained the strategic value. Arriving rested could mean the difference between securing $60 million in funding or walking away empty-handed. From his economy seat, 3 rows behind the first-class divider, Isaiah watched his daughter settle in, pulling out her tablet to review her presentation one final time. DNR Ventures controlled $9 billion in education technology investments. Their backing would bring MindScape to every underserved school district in America. The origins of MindScape read like a modern fairy tale, except every word was true. At age 7, Zara Brooks had created a simple program to help her mother teach children with different learning styles. By 8, she'd expanded it to address specific learning disabilities. At 9, she'd secured her first patent. By 10, MindScape had 1 million users. Now, at 11, she commanded a tech empire worth $2. 1 billion employed 712 people across 11 countries and had just that morning reviewed quarterly projections showing 340% growth. The company's mission was elegantly simple: make education accessible to every mind, regardless of how that mind processed information. Traditional educational software followed linear paths. Right answers moved you forward. Wrong answers held you back. MindScape was different. It analyzed how students approached problems, identifying patterns in their mistakes to reveal underlying cognitive processes. A dyslexic child might reverse letters not because they didn't understand the concept, but because their brain processed visual information differently. MindScape adapted accordingly. The interface itself was revolutionary. For children with dyslexia, text could appear with increased spacing between letters, specialized fonts, or even in motion that matched their specific processing pattern. For those with ADHD, lessons incorporated micro-rewards and variable stimulation to maintain engagement. Students with autism spectrum disorders could adjust sensory elements, reducing animations, modifying colors, controlling sound levels, creating an environment where learning could happen without overwhelming their senses. When a child first encountered MindScape, the system observed their interactions, collecting thousands of data points, response times, error patterns, attention shifts, learning preferences. The proprietary neural network. Zara's breakthrough innovation then constructed a cognitive profile and continuously refined it as the child progressed. Unlike static accommodations, MindScape evolved with the learner adapting as their needs changed. The results were revolutionary. Schools implementing MindScape reported 83% improvements in reading comprehension among students with learning disabilities. Math proficiency among neurodiverse students increased by 67%. Most importantly, student confidence scores doubled. Learning isn't one-size-fits-all, Zara often explained in interviews. So why should educational tools be? Gabriela Ramirez had joined MindScape 2 years ago, leaving a prestigious position at Microsoft to work for a child. People thought she was crazy until they saw MindScape's data. "I have a nephew with severe ADHD," Gabriella explained when asked why she made the switch. Traditional schools failed him. Traditional software failed him. MindScape was the first tool that met him where he was. "When Zara offered me the position, I didn't see a child. I saw the future of education." Together, they'd built a company culture as adaptive as their software. Employees worked flexible hours. Offices included sensory-friendly spaces. Every design decision considered accessibility first. The result was a dedicated workforce, united by purpose rather than profit. MindScape's business model was equally innovative. Schools in affluent districts paid premium prices for the software. Those funds subsidized free or reduced-cost implementations in underserved areas. The approach had earned them adoration from educators and suspicion from competitors. AlphaTech Ventures had approached them 6 months ago with an acquisition offer that valued MindScape at $3 billion, well above market estimates. The catch: MindScape would become a premium product available only to schools and districts that could afford substantial licensing fees. The board had voted unanimously to reject the offer. Zara's statement to the press was characteristically direct. MindScape exists to eliminate educational inequality, not reinforce it. AlphaTech's CEO, Gregory Reynolds, had responded with a thinly veiled threat. Young companies often fail to appreciate market realities. Educational idealism rarely survives contact with business fundamentals. Since then, MindScape had experienced a series of unusual challenges. Unexplained server outages, key staff receiving competitive job offers, and sudden regulatory inquiries in 3 states. Isaiah had hired additional security, both digital and physical, though he'd kept the concerns from Zara when possible. The DNR Ventures meeting represented more than just funding. It was protection through legitimacy. If Silicon Valley's oldest education-focused venture firm backed MindScape, others would think twice before attacking it. That's why Zara sat in first class, reviewing her presentation one final time, unaware that the man who had tried to take her seat was part of a coordinated effort to destroy everything she'd built. Maxwell Whitfield had always considered himself a good person. Sure, he could be demanding, even abrasive, but he delivered results. He'd worked his way up from middle management to senior VP through dedication and intelligence. At least that's what he told himself. The truth was more complicated. His rise at next level had coincided with the departures of 2 promising minority executives. He'd never connected those events until now, sitting on a plane, Googling the child he'd just humiliated, seeing her extraordinary accomplishments scroll past. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, remembering a conversation with his sister last weekend. "Jamie's teacher says he's not trying hard enough," she'd said, frustration evident in her voice. "But I watch him fight through every assignment. He wants to succeed. He just can't seem to process written instructions." His nephew, diagnosed with dyslexia at 8, struggled daily with a system that wasn't designed for how his brain worked. "Have you tried specialized software?" Maxwell had suggested, mentally cataloging competitors' products. "We've tried everything," the school recommended, his sister replied. "Nothing really helps. There's one program all the parents talk about, MindScape, but it's not on the district's approved list. Something about competitive contracts." He'd dismissed the conversation then, too preoccupied with Next Level's upcoming product launch. Now, looking at MindScape's results for dyslexic students, 83% improvement in reading comprehension, he felt a wave of unease. Was he participating in keeping this technology from children like Jamie 2 weeks ago? He'd sat in AlphaTech's gleaming conference room as senior leadership discussed competitive landscape optimization. Gregory Reynolds, AlphaTech's shark-eyed CEO, had displayed a slide titled Elimination Priorities. "These companies represent existential threats to our educational market position," Reynolds had explained. "Not because their products are superior." He'd smiled coldly, but because their narrative is more appealing to the public and policymakers. The list included 5 companies, 3 founded by women, 2 by people of color. MindScape topped the list, highlighted in red. The Brooks girl is particularly problematic, Reynolds continued. The media loves her. Politicians love her. Her Education for All platform is gaining traction with school boards nationwide. Their technology is impressive, offered Diane Mercer, Next Level's CTO. The adaptive algorithms are irrelevant, Reynolds interrupted. Technology can be replicated. Public sentiment cannot. We offered a generous acquisition package. They declined. Now we move to Plan B, which, as Maxwell had asked. Elimination through legitimacy challenges, Reynolds replied smoothly. We create concerns about their business practices, financial structures, user privacy. Nothing directly actionable, just enough to stall their momentum, while we position alternatives. At the time, Maxwell had nodded along, seeing it as aggressive but legal competition. He hadn't realized he would become the opening move in their attack, or that elimination meant the orchestrated destruction of a child's dream. That night at his hotel, Maxwell had called his sister. "Tell me more about this MindScape program Jamie's friends use. It's amazing," she'd said, suddenly animated. "My friend Sharon's son has the same issues as Jamie. He used to hate reading, now he can't put books down. The software somehow adapts to how his brain works. Sharon says it's like someone finally speaking his language. Why isn't it on the approved list again?" His sister's voice had hardened. Politics. The district has an exclusive contract with Next Level Educational Systems. His company. Their product is cheaper, but it doesn't work nearly as well for kids with learning differences. The conversation had left him unsettled, but he'd pushed those feelings aside. Business was business. Sometimes, competition got messy. Besides, he had a career to think about, a position to maintain, a lifestyle to fund. The acquisition by AlphaTech had already brought bonus opportunities he'd never imagined. Now, as the plane began its unexpected descent back to Oakland, Maxwell scrolled through more articles about Zara Brooks. A video showed her demonstrating MindScape to a group of visibly moved teachers. When a child says, "I can't learn this," what they often mean is, "I can't learn this the way you're teaching it," she explained with preternatural poise. MindScape bridges that gap. The interface on screen shifted from standard text to a dynamic display where letters maintained consistent spacing and subtle highlighting guided the reader's eye. For students with certain processing patterns, static text can appear to move or blur. By introducing controlled motion that matches their natural visual processing, we actually stabilize their perception. The demonstration continued with personalized adaptations for different learning styles, each transformation eliciting amazed responses from the educators. Another headline caught his eye. Next Level CEO calls MindScape unproven experiment. Despite data showing 78% improvement in learning outcomes, his own company actively lying about a competitor's product. Then his phone buzzed with a text from Gregory Reynolds. "Well done. Security response initiated. Our legal team is standing by with evidence packets. Your cooperation has been noted and will be reflected in your year-end compensation review." Maxwell felt suddenly ill. What had he done? He glanced toward the front of the plane where Zara sat calmly working on her tablet, despite the chaos unfolding around her. Despite what he had set in motion. A memory surfaced, his sister's voice breaking, as she described Jamie's teacher, suggesting he might never read at grade level. "He's so smart, Max. He understands everything when it's explained aloud. But they keep testing him with written exams, and then they tell him he's below average. He's starting to believe them." Had he just attacked the very person who might have helped his nephew? "We're beginning our descent into Oakland International Airport," the captain announced. Please ensure your seatbelts are fastened and all electronic devices are stowed. Maxwell didn't move his phone, still in his hand, the evidence of his complicity glowing on the screen. Across the aisle, Victoria Harrington watched him with knowing eyes, a small digital recorder visible in her hand, for just a moment, before disappearing into her purse. "Quite a coincidence," she remarked quietly. "That security concern being raised right after your phone call." Maxwell's head snapped up, meeting her steady gaze. For the first time, he wondered who Victoria Harrington really was, and why she had so conveniently offered her seat. "You have no idea what you've just participated in," she said, her voice too low for others to hear. "But I think you're beginning to suspect. The question is, what will you do about it?" Oakland International Airport materialized through morning fog like a fortress. As Flight 738 descended, Zara pressed her face to the window, watching FBI vehicles arrange themselves on the tarmac like chess pieces. Her heart hammered against her ribs, belying her outward calm. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not today. Not when everything hinged on the DNR meeting. For the first time since her mother's death, Zara felt truly afraid. Not of the investigation itself. She knew MindScape's operations were impeccable. But of the delay, the disruption, the potential damage to the company's reputation. What if DNR backed out? What if the funding fell through? What if the 147 schools waiting for implementation had to wait another year because investors got spooked? All those children still struggling with systems that didn't recognize their brilliance. She took a deep breath, remembering her mother's voice. "Fear is just information, Sparrow. It tells you what matters. Use it. Don't let it use you." "It's going to be okay, Sparrow," Isaiah said, having rushed forward from economy. "Being right and being believed are different things." Dad, Zara replied with wisdom no 11-year-old should possess. The plane touched down smoothly. As they taxied to a remote area, the cabin atmosphere thickened with tension. Through her window, Zara counted 3 FBI agents, 2 Oakland police officers, one figure in an unmarked suit, whose posture screamed federal authority. Olivia Martinez approached her earlier dismissiveness, replaced by something approaching sympathy. "Miss Brooks, the officers are ready for you." As Zara stood, the entire first-class cabin turned to watch. Maxwell Whitfield couldn't meet her eyes. "I hope your meeting goes well, Mr. Whitfield," Zara said as she passed, her voice carrying no accusation. The simple wish cut deeper than anger could have. The jet bridge was empty except for law enforcement. Agent Samantha Rodriguez, mid-30s with a no-nonsense ponytail, and FBI windbreaker stepped forward. "Miss Brooks, Mr. Brooks," she said, her tone professional but not unkind. "I'm Agent Rodriguez. We need you to come with us to answer some questions." Isaiah placed a protective hand on Zara's shoulder. "My daughter is 11 years old. Whatever questions you have, you can ask in my presence, and I'd like our attorney present as well." "Of course," Rodriguez replied. "We're not making any accusations at this point. We're responding to serious concerns about potentially fraudulent financial activity." Behind them, passengers were being held on the plane. Through the windows, Zara could see people filming with their phones. In the age of social media, this confrontation would be viral before they reached the FBI field office. "May I?" Zara asked, gesturing to her tablet. Rodriguez nodded cautiously. Zara pulled up her ID and company documentation. "I am Zara Brooks, founder and majority shareholder of MindScape Educational Technologies. My identifications are legitimate. My finances are transparent, and this detention is the latest in a series of coordinated attacks on my company." Rodriguez blinked clearly, unprepared for such articulation from someone so young. "We'll sort this out at the field office, Miss Brooks." As they walked through the terminal, escorted by agents on both sides, travelers stopped to stare. Some recognized Zara, pointing and whispering. One woman called out, "We love MindScape," My son uses it every day. Outside a black SUV waited. As they approached, Gabriela Ramirez emerged from an airport taxi rushing toward them. Isaiah Zara, she called. An agent moved to intercept her. I'm Gabriela Ramirez, Chief Operating Officer of MindScape. What's happening, ma'am? Please step back, the agent instructed. It's okay, Isaiah called. Gabriela, call Diane Mendez. Tell her to meet us at the Oakland FBI field office. And contact DNR Ventures. We'll need to reschedule. Gabriela nodded, already dialing. I'm on it. Zara, ¿estás bien? I'm fine, Zara replied calmly. Please bring the financial documentation from the secure server. All of it. As they were escorted into the vehicle, Zara glanced back at the plane. Passengers were finally being allowed to deplane. Among them, she spotted Maxwell Whitfield, looking distinctly uncomfortable, as Victoria Harrington spoke intensely into his ear. That woman, Zara said to her father. The one who switched seats with the man. She knows something. Isaiah followed her gaze. I think you're right, Sparrow, and I think she wants us to know it too. The SUV doors closed, sealing them in government-issue silence as they pulled away from the airport. Zara reached for her father's hand, a rare display of uncertainty from a child who had spent most of her life being the most capable person in any room. Inside the vehicle, with no eyes on them, but her father Zara finally let her composure crack. Her lower lip trembled slightly, and her voice dropped to a whisper. Dad, this isn't random, is it? Isaiah squeezed her hand. No, baby. This is what happens when you scare powerful people. But remember what your mother always said. The truth doesn't need to shout, Zara finished. It just needs to be spoken clearly. She looked out the window at Oakland, passing by the mix of industrial areas and revitalized neighborhoods, reminding her of Detroit. So many different worlds existing side by side, some thriving, others struggling. That's why MindScape mattered. It bridged those gaps, creating opportunity, regardless of zip code or school budget. I'm scared, she admitted so quietly, Isaiah almost didn't hear. Not of the investigation, but of failing all those kids waiting for MindScape. If this scares away DNR, Isaiah turned her face gently toward him. Listen to me, Sparrow. Your mother used to say that the universe conspires to help those with righteous purpose. If DNR is the right partner, they'll see this for what it is. If not, we'll find another way. We always do. Zara nodded, drawing strength from his certainty. By the time the SUV pulled up to the FBI field office, her game face was back in place, the composed, brilliant entrepreneur ready to defend her creation. The Oakland FBI field office processed them with mechanical efficiency. Conference Room C, not an interrogation room, Agent Rodriguez noted, leading them inside. The room was standard government-issue rectangular table. Uncomfortable chairs. A pitcher of water that had been sitting out long enough to reach room temperature. The only personal touch was a child's drawing pinned to a corkboard, a stick figure with an FBI badge, surrounded by multicolored hearts. Your algorithm increased learning retention by 47% for students with learning disabilities, Rodriguez said without preamble. My daughter uses MindScape. ADHD severe. She went from failing to honor roll. Zara blinked, surprised by the personal disclosure. Then you know I'm not a fraud. I know you're brilliant, Rodriguez replied. But someone wants us to think otherwise. She pulled out a thick folder. The allegations are specific. $47 million moved through 14 international accounts, complex structures, to avoid taxation, using educational partnerships to launder money. Isaiah leaned forward. That's absurd. Every dollar is accounted for. We operate with complete transparency, Zara added. Those international accounts fund our global access initiatives, providing MindScape to students in underserved regions. The door opened. A man in his early 50s entered, gray suit, regulation haircut, the bearing of someone who had seen too much to be easily impressed. Special Agent Donovan, White Collar Crimes Division. He introduced himself. "These are serious allegations, Miss Brooks." "I understand the seriousness," Zara replied, meeting his gaze directly. "Which is why I find the timing suspicious. We're scheduled to meet with Billionaire Ventures this afternoon about a major funding round. This investigation, based on false allegations, could potentially derail that meeting and damage our company's reputation." Donovan raised an eyebrow, surprised by the child's grasp of corporate strategy. "That's quite a coincidence." "I don't believe in coincidences," Agent Donovan, Zara replied. "Not when my company has been under coordinated attack since rejecting an acquisition offer from AlphaTech Ventures 6 months ago." Before Donovan could respond, the door burst open again. Diane Mendez arrived like a legal hurricane, former federal prosecutor, now MindScape's chief counsel. "My clients will cooperate fully after I've reviewed these allegations," she announced, setting her briefcase on the table with a definitive thunk. Gabriella followed, carrying a laptop and external drive. "I've brought the complete financial records as requested." Donovan raised an eyebrow. "That was fast." "We maintain all records in a secured, accessible format, specifically to address any regulatory inquiries," Diane explained crisply. "Transparency isn't just a buzzword at MindScape, it's policy." Gabriella opened the laptop, connecting the drive. "These are our Global Access Initiative accounts. Every dollar is documented." Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Account 1. Tanzania Educational Partnership. 68,000 students in Dar es Salaam slums. Account 2. Bangladesh Rural Schools. 52,000 students. She continued through all 14 accounts, each representing thousands of children receiving free or subsidized access. The transactions were meticulously categorized with implementation reports, student outcome data, and local educational authority approvals. On screen, the MindScape interface appeared, showing the unique implementation for Tanzania adaptive learning modules that accommodated multiple dialects, cultural contexts, and educational backgrounds. "This is our Swahili language module," Gabriella explained, navigating through the platform. "It incorporates cultural references specific to East African communities while addressing regional learning challenges." She clicked through to the administrative backend, revealing the cost structure. "Our implementation costs in Dar es Salaam were 43% lower than comparable programs because we partnered with local educators to customize content. That savings was reinvested in additional hardware for schools without reliable technology access. These aren't shell companies or tax havens," Isaiah explained. "They're educational partnerships designed to bring MindScape to children who would otherwise be left behind." Rodriguez and Donovan exchanged glances. "The allegations suggested these were fictional entities," Donovan said slowly. "They're very real," Zara replied. "I can show you video calls from last week's teacher training in Nairobi, or the student achievement celebration in rural India." She pulled up a video on her tablet. The screen filled with the faces of children in a classroom thousands of miles away, their excitement evident as they demonstrated their progress through MindScape's adaptive learning modules. These students improved their math proficiency by 63% in just 4 months, Zara explained. Many had been labeled as slow learners because traditional teaching methods didn't match their cognitive processing styles. "Someone fed you false information," Diane stated flatly. "The question is, who and why?" Donovan's phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression shifting subtly. "Excuse me for a moment," he said, stepping outside. Rodriguez leaned forward. "While we're waiting, perhaps you could explain why someone would target MindScape with these allegations." Zara met her gaze steadily. Because we refused to be acquired by AlphaTech Ventures. They wanted to restrict MindScape to premium markets only. We refused. That's a serious accusation, Rodriguez noted. It's a provable pattern, Diane countered. She placed a thick folder on the table. CloudPath Solutions, Neural Bridge Data Sphere. Each followed the same pattern. Refuse. AlphaTech face allegations. Lose momentum, forced to sell or shut down. You're suggesting orchestrated corporate sabotage, Rodriguez said carefully. I'm providing evidence of a pattern, Diane replied, unless the FBI has become AlphaTech's enforcement arm. The door opened again. Donovan returned with a woman in her late 40s, Assistant Director Keller, according to her identification. Miss Brooks, Keller began. We've received documentation from a whistleblower suggesting your company was specifically targeted as part of larger corporate malfeasance. She pulled up an email on her tablet. Does the phrase Project Elimination mean anything to you? Zara shook her head. It appears to be an internal AlphaTech initiative to neutralize competitive threats through coordinated legal, regulatory, and public relations attacks, Keller explained. Your company tops their target list. Gabriella gasped. That explains the server attacks, the staff poaching attempts, the false allegations, Isaiah finished grimly. May I? Zara asked, reaching for Gabriella's laptop. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up MindScape server logs. Here, 17 intrusion attempts from AlphaTech IP addresses. Here, queries targeting our international partnerships. She revealed a pattern that made the agents lean forward. Automated bot attacks designed to look like fraud, creating digital footprints to support false allegations. They were planting evidence. They were creating a narrative, Rodriguez breathed. They were staging a corporate coup, Diane corrected. Keller stood. Miss Brooks, this investigation into MindScape is terminated. You're free to go. But we'll need your cooperation as witnesses in what's about to become the largest corporate fraud investigation in Silicon Valley history. As they gathered their materials, Donovan approached Isaiah. Mr. Brooks, he said quietly. You should know the call that initiated this investigation came from the plane. A passenger named Maxwell Whitfield. Isaiah nodded unsurprised. Thank you. Outside the field office, reporters had already gathered, alerted by social media posts about Zara's detention. Camera flashes exploded as they emerged. Zara, why were you detained? Is MindScape under investigation? Did AlphaTech orchestrate this? Diane stepped forward. Miss Brooks was briefly questioned due to false allegations, which have been completely dismissed. MindScape continues to operate with full transparency and integrity. No further comments at this time. As they walked toward their waiting car, Zara spotted a familiar figure across the street. Victoria Harrington stood watching, a slight smile on her face. When their eyes met, Victoria gave a small nod, then turned and walked away. Dad, Zara said quietly, I think we need to find out who that woman really is. While the FBI questioning was underway, Victoria Harrington made a call from San Francisco International Airport that would detonate in Silicon Valley. James Victoria Harrington. Yes, about tomorrow's board meeting. Zara Brooks won't make it. She's detained by the FBI. She paused, listening. I'm sending you something that will explain everything. She uploaded 9 months of evidence-recorded meetings where AlphaTech executives discussed neutralizing competitive threats, emails coordinating anonymous allegations, financial records showing payments to regulatory pressure consultants. Victoria's journey to this moment had been unlikely. 20 years as a civil rights attorney, fighting discrimination cases in courtrooms across America, followed by an abrupt career shift to venture capital at age 50. Her colleagues had been baffled by the transition. Why would someone dedicated to justice suddenly join a world known for its cutthroat practices? Sometimes you need to understand the machinery of power from the inside to effectively dismantle it, she'd told her confused friends. Change requires both external pressure and internal subversion. At AlphaTech, she'd risen quickly, her legal acumen and strategic thinking proving valuable in an industry increasingly facing regulatory scrutiny. As Senior VP of Strategic Investments, she gained access to the company's most sensitive decisions. She watched, she listened, she documented, and she waited for the right moment to act. That moment had come when Gregory Reynolds first presented Project Elimination. Victoria had sat silently as he outlined a strategy that violated every ethical principle she held dear, and quite possibly several federal laws. She'd recognized immediately that this wasn't merely aggressive competition, but organized discrimination, targeting founders based on demographics rather than business fundamentals. For 9 months, she'd gathered evidence while appearing to be a loyal executive. She recorded meetings, copied documents, tracked patterns. When she learned MindScape would be targeted next, a company founded by a black child whose innovation threatened AlphaTech's market position, she knew the time had come to act. Now, as the evidence uploaded to James Harlow at Billionaire Ventures, Victoria felt a weight lifting. 9 months of silent complicity, ending in one decisive action. On the plane, Maxwell Whitfield sat paralyzed. His phone buzzed with frantic messages from Next Level. "Did you make the call? Confirm Protocol 7 activation. Your cooperation is noted in your employment contract." He pulled up his contract, scrolling to addendums added after AlphaTech's acquisition buried in subsection 47C. Employee agrees to assist in competitive intelligence gathering and market position enhancement. He'd signed away his ethics without realizing it. The phone rang. Gregory Reynolds himself. Maxwell hesitated, then answered. "What the hell is happening?" Max Reynolds demanded without preamble. "The FBI just called our legal department. They're executing a search warrant at headquarters tomorrow morning." I don't know," Maxwell stammered. "I made the call as instructed, but what?" "You said the Brooks girl was detained. This should have bought us at least 48 hours to implement the rest of the strategy." "What exactly is the strategy?" Greg Maxwell asked, his voice steadier than he felt. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like we're attacking a child for creating successful educational software." "Don't be naive," Reynolds snapped. "This isn't about the girl. It's about market position. Next Level's educational division loses 3% market share every quarter that MindScape operates independently. The acquisition was the clean option. They refused. Now we protect our interests through alternative means. By framing an 11-year-old for financial crimes, by neutralizing a competitive threat. Don't develop a conscience now, Max. Your bonus structure depends on successful execution of strategic initiatives. Remember that." The call ended abruptly. Maxwell stared at his phone, nausea rising in his throat. "Quite a pickle, Mr. Whitfield." Victoria had somehow appeared beside him. Maxwell jumped. "How did you get back on the plane?" "I have my ways." She showed him an email chain. 2 weeks ago, you were designated as a potential field asset. Your profile, traditional mindset, strong hierarchical identification, probable unconscious bias against disruptive minorities, likelihood of voluntary action, 76%. "They profiled me like a weapon," Maxwell whispered, "like a predictable tool. Your prejudices made you easy to weaponize." Victoria replied without sympathy. "You saw a black child in first class and immediately assumed she didn't belong. AlphaTech simply provided a channel for that bias, a way to transform your personal prejudice into corporate advantage." Maxwell's face flushed with shame and defensive anger. "You don't know anything about me." "I know more than you think," Victoria countered. "I know you have a nephew with dyslexia who struggles in school. I know your sister has asked about MindScape specifically, and you dismissed her. I know you've risen through management by maintaining systems that exclude voices like Zara Brooks, not because you're actively malicious, but because you're comfortably complicit. The accuracy of her assessment left Maxwell speechless. The question now, Victoria continued, is what you intend to do about it. What can I do? Maxwell asked, genuine confusion in his voice. The damage is done. There's always a choice, Mr. Whitfield. You can continue being a weapon aimed at a child trying to help children like your nephew. Or you can become a witness to corporate corruption. One path leads to continued comfort and eventual indictment. The other leads to temporary discomfort and potential redemption. She handed him a business card with a phone number handwritten on the back. When you decide, call this number. Either way, I suggest you start looking for a good attorney. By evening, Zara and her team had checked into the St. Regis, San Francisco. The DNR meeting had been rescheduled for the following morning. The venture firm's partners were intrigued, rather than deterred by the day's events. Isaiah was on the phone with their security team when a knock came at the suite door. Gabriella checked the peephole, then opened it with surprise. Ms. Harrington, Victoria. Harrington stood in the hallway, elegant as ever. I believe it's time we had a proper conversation. In the suite's living room, Victoria accepted a cup of tea, surveying the assembled group. Zara, Isaiah, Gabriella, and Diane. I suppose I should introduce myself properly, she began. Until yesterday, I was Senior Vice President of Strategic Investments at AlphaTech Ventures. I resigned after compiling enough evidence to initiate federal investigations into their business practices. You're a whistleblower, Zara stated. Victoria smiled faintly. I prefer to think of myself as someone who remembered her conscience before it was too late. Why target MindScape? Isaiah asked. Because you represent everything they fear, Victoria replied. Innovation that prioritizes access over profit. Technology that actually fulfills its promise to help the disadvantaged. And most threateningly, success that comes from outside their controlled ecosystem. She opened her laptop, turning it toward them. Project Elimination isn't just about MindScape. It's a coordinated strategy to identify and neutralize minority-owned tech companies that refuse acquisition. The screen showed a flowchart of alarming clarity. Identify targets predominantly minority or female-led companies, approach with acquisition offers significantly below market value, and for those who refused, implement pressure campaigns, including regulatory challenges, planted negative press coordinated social media attacks, and strategic poaching of key employees. They've successfully neutralized 7 companies in the past 18 months, Victoria continued. CloudPath Solutions, founded by a Black woman, faced sudden patent infringement claims that drained their legal resources. Neuralbridge, founded by 2 Hispanic engineers, experienced a security breach that was later traced to an AlphaTech subsidiary. DataSphere, woman-owned, was subjected to a coordinated media campaign questioning their data privacy practices. How did you get this information? Diane asked, professional skepticism evident. I've been documenting everything since I noticed the pattern, Victoria explained. I joined AlphaTech 5 years ago after a career in civil rights litigation. I thought I could change things from within. She laughed bitterly. Instead, I watched them perfect discrimination into corporate strategy. Why help us? Isaiah pressed. Victoria looked at Zara. Because your daughter reminds me of myself at her age. Brilliant, determined, naively believing that excellence would be enough to overcome prejudice. She turned to Isaiah. And because I'm tired of watching brilliant minds destroyed by mediocre men protecting their advantages. You were on our flight deliberately, Zara realized. I was watching to see who they'd target next. Victoria confirmed. When I saw Maxwell Whitfield board, I knew something was happening. He's been a reliable asset in previous operations. He tried to take my seat, Zara said quietly. That wasn't planned, Victoria replied. That was just who he is, a man who can't stand seeing a black child in a position he believes belongs to him by default. AlphaTech didn't create his prejudice. They just weaponized it. What happens now? Gabriella asked. Victoria smiled. Now we beat them at their own game. Maxwell Whitfield stood in the marble lobby of the St. Regis for 40 minutes before finding courage to approach the front desk. When Isaiah opened the suite door, Maxwell looked like he'd aged years in hours. Mr. Brooks, I need to confess. We know you made the call, Isaiah said simply. Maxwell's knees nearly buckled. You know, the timing was obvious. The question is why you're here. The confrontation Maxwell had dreaded was happening, yet Isaiah's tone held no rage, only careful assessment. This somehow made it worse. He would have preferred shouting accusations anything but this measured evaluation. I've spent the last 4 hours thinking about what to say. Maxwell admitted, his voice unsteady. Explanations, justifications, excuses. None of them matter. The truth is, I saw your daughter and made assumptions based on how she looked. Then I acted on those assumptions when given the opportunity. There's no excuse for that. Isaiah studied him silently, his expression unreadable. My nephew Maxwell continued. The words tumbling out, now has dyslexia. Severe. He's brilliant with numbers, science, anything verbal, but he can't process written language conventionally. He's been struggling for years. My sister mentioned MindScape, specifically said other parents raved about it. I dismissed it because it wasn't on our company's approved list, because it was a competitor. He pulled out a folder with trembling hands. After you were taken off the plane, I received these. He spread documents across the table. Performance reviews of every minority employee at next level, tagged for redundancy. Partnership assessments for every woman or minority-led company marked reevaluate. And this project elimination expansion plans. 17 more companies targeted. Zara studied the documents. They're institutionalizing discrimination, making prejudice scalable. Your company is marked Priority Alpha, Maxwell continued. They knew you'd be on that flight. They knew I'd be on that flight. They positioned us for collision, knowing my biases would create an opportunity. They weaponized your prejudice, Gabriella said bluntly. Yes, the word came out raw, and I let them, because it was easier than examining those prejudices, because it aligned with my professional interests, because his voice broke slightly, because I've spent my career benefiting from systems that exclude people like your daughter, and acknowledging that would require changing how I see myself. The room fell silent. Diane recorded everything evidence, but also testimony about the anatomy of everyday prejudice, enabling organized oppression. When did you realize what you'd done? Isaiah asked finally. It started on the plane, Maxwell admitted. Seeing the actual technology, understanding what it does. Then my sister called, while I was being questioned by the FBI. Jamie, my nephew, tried MindScape at a friend's house yesterday. He read an entire chapter book. First time ever. Maxwell's voice cracked. I nearly destroyed the company that might save my nephew's education because I couldn't see past my own prejudice. What do you want? Isaiah asked. Redemption. I don't deserve, Maxwell replied. But I'll settle for being useful. I have 17 years of emails, documents, recordings. Every next-level meeting since AlphaTech acquisition. You'll lose everything, Diane warned. I've already lost everything that matters. My integrity, my nephew's respect when he learns what I did, my ability to look in mirrors. Zara, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke. My mother taught at a school where most teachers had given up on the students. She said the problem wasn't the children. It was the adults who couldn't see past their own expectations. She approached Maxwell, her expression neither forgiving nor condemning. "You tried to harm me today because you couldn't see past what you expected. That doesn't make you special. It makes you typical. The question is whether you're willing to be atypical now." Maxwell met her gaze, really seeing her for the first time. "What do you need me to do?" Isaiah and Diane exchanged glances. "Everything," Isaiah replied. "We need to know everything." Over the next 2 hours, Maxwell detailed AlphaTech's operations, the targeting protocols, the pressure tactics, the executives involved. He provided passwords to internal systems, copies of confidential memos, and most damningly recordings of strategy meetings, where discrimination was explicitly discussed under the guise of market optimization. They specifically look for founder demographics, he explained, pulling up an internal scoring document. Non-white founders get an elimination priority score 40% higher than white founders with identical business metrics. Female founders score 35% higher. The intersection non-white women score highest of all. "This is explicit documented discrimination," Diane noted, reviewing the materials. "They never use those terms," Maxwell explained. "Everything is couched in market analysis, language, founder credibility factors, long-term resilience indicators, institutional compatibility metrics. But when you look at how these factors are calculated, they're just proxies for race, gender, and age." He pulled up another document, this one showing acquisition patterns. "Here's the real strategy offer: below-market acquisitions to minority-founded companies. If they accept, consolidate their technology and gradually eliminate their leadership. If they refuse, activate market correction protocols, coordinated attacks to devalue the company until they're forced to accept an even lower offer or shut down completely. They'll destroy you for this," Gabriella observed. Probably Maxwell agreed. "But they were already destroying me by inches. At least, this way it matters." As he prepared to leave, Maxwell hesitated at the door. "Miss Brooks, Zara, I'm sorry, not just for today, but for every time someone like me has made you feel less than extraordinary." Zara nodded once, neither accepting nor rejecting his apology. "My mother also said that awareness is the first step toward change, but only if you keep walking." "I intend to," Maxwell replied, his voice steadier than it had been all day. After he left, Isaiah turned to Victoria. "Can we trust him?" "Not completely," Victoria replied. "But fear and guilt are powerful motivators. He'll help us because he needs to believe he's not irredeemable." "None of this will matter if AlphaTech discredits us first," Diane pointed out. "We need a platform." Victoria smiled. "That's already arranged. Billionaire Ventures boardroom, 9 a.m. tomorrow. Every major tech investment firm in Silicon Valley will be watching." "That was supposed to be our funding pitch," Gabriella said with confusion. "It still is," Victoria replied. "But you'll be pitching more than software. You'll be offering them the chance to be on the right side of history." Later that night, after the others had retired, Zara stood at the window of their suite, looking out at the San Francisco skyline. The city sparkled like a circuit board, each light a connection in a vast network. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass, suddenly overwhelmed by the events of the day. The confrontation on the plane seemed like it had happened weeks ago, rather than hours. The FBI investigation, Maxwell's confession, Victoria's revelations. It was too much. "I miss you, Mom," she whispered, a tear sliding down her cheek. "I don't know if I can do this. I'm just a kid. I'm supposed to be worrying about homework and friends, not fighting corporate conspiracies." For a moment, she allowed herself the luxury of doubt, of fear, of the childhood vulnerability she usually kept hidden behind her extraordinary intellect. "Can't sleep." Sparrow. Isaiah asked, joining her. Zara quickly wiped away her tears, but not quickly enough. Isaiah's expression softened as he wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "It's okay to be scared," he said gently. "I'm scared too." "You are." Zara looked up in surprise. "Of course. We're facing powerful people who've shown they'll do anything to protect their advantages." "That's frightening." He smiled slightly. "But your mother always said that doing the right thing isn't about being fearless. It's about acting despite your fear." "I keep thinking about what Mom would do," Zara replied. "She wouldn't just want to win. She'd want to fix the broken system." Isaiah nodded. "Then that's what we'll do. Not just for MindScape, but for every company that comes after." "It's not fair," Zara whispered, "that I have to be exceptional just to be treated as equal." "No," Isaiah agreed. "It's not. But your mother also said that those who see the unfairness most clearly are the ones most able to change it." Zara leaned against her father, drawing strength from his presence. Tomorrow would bring its own battles, but for now, this moment of quiet understanding was enough. The Billionaire Ventures boardroom in the Salesforce Tower commanded a panoramic view of San Francisco Bay. 12 board members sat around a gleaming mahogany table, their combined net worth exceeding $47 billion. They had expected a routine investment review. What they got was revolution. James Harlow, Billionaire's silver-haired chairman, opened the meeting. "Before we begin, I should note that certain revelations have come to our attention regarding industry practices that may impact today's discussion. Ms. Harrington, would you care to elaborate?" Victoria rose first. 12 hours ago, Zara Brooks was removed from a flight and interrogated by the FBI based on false allegations orchestrated by AlphaTech Ventures. This is part of an organized warfare against minority innovation. She presented for 40 minutes, laying out devastating evidence of AlphaTech's operations. Board members exchanged glances, ranging from shock to calculation to outrage. "This is corporate terrorism," remarked Eliza Doherty, Billionaire's youngest partner. "How is this not front-page news?" "Because they're careful," Victoria explained. "They never leave fingerprints until now." She nodded to Zara, who approached the presentation system with quiet confidence. "The breakthrough came when we examined MindScape's server logs," Zara explained, bringing up a visualization of network traffic. "We identified multiple intrusion patterns originating from AlphaTech-controlled IP addresses. The display showed glowing lines connecting various points, forming an unmistakable pattern of coordinated attacks." "What you're seeing isn't random hacking," Zara continued. "It's digital forensic framing, creating evidence of financial irregularities where none exist." She zoomed in on specific data points, explaining in clear, accessible language how the attackers had attempted to create false transaction records that would trigger regulatory flags. Here she pointed to a cluster of data points. They tried to insert ghost transactions that would appear to connect our Tanzania Educational Fund to a shell company in the Cayman Islands. The transactions never existed, but they planted metadata that would appear in a surface-level investigation. The visualization shifted to a three-dimensional model showing normal transaction patterns in blue and the fraudulent insertions in red. The red lines stood out clearly artificial connections, creating the appearance of money laundering. "This is how MindScape's architecture normally handles international transactions," Zara explained, highlighting the blue pathways. "Each transaction requires triple verification from physically separate locations. Now watch what happens when someone tries to insert fraudulent data." She played a time-lapse recording of the attack. Red lines attempted to integrate with the blue network, but created obvious anomalies in the pattern disturbances in the natural flow that any careful investigator would question. But here's where it gets interesting, Zara continued. The attackers knew this level of scrutiny was likely, so they implemented a secondary strategy. They didn't just plant false transactions. They created a false audit trail, designed to make legitimate transactions appear suspicious. She highlighted a series of metadata injections, targeting routine educational funding transfers to schools in developing countries. These insertions modified timestamp data to make regular educational payments appear irregular and potentially suspicious. They also attempted to corrupt verification records to suggest inadequate oversight. The board members leaned forward, captivated by both the technical explanation and the composure of the child delivering it. "How did you catch this?" asked Raymond Diaz, DNR's technical expert. "Because they didn't understand our architecture," Zara replied with a hint of pride. MindScape uses a triple verification system for all financial transactions, a feature we implemented specifically to protect our educational partners in regions with unstable banking systems. Every transaction requires 3 separate confirmation keys, each tied to physical devices in different locations. She brought up another screen showing the security system. When they tried to create false transaction records, they could only compromise one verification layer. The system flagged the inconsistency immediately. Could this be explained as routine penetration testing? Another board member asked skeptically. Many companies conduct authorized attacks on their own systems to identify vulnerabilities. An excellent question, Zara acknowledged. However, these attacks originated from servers registered to shell companies that trace back to AlphaTech subsidiaries. More importantly, they specifically targeted our financial records rather than security infrastructure, and they attempted to insert fraudulent data rather than simply testing defenses. She pulled up IP trace documentation and server registration records. Additionally, these attacks intensified immediately after we rejected AlphaTech's acquisition offer, and again, following our scheduling of this meeting with DNR. This is fascinating from a technical perspective, Harlow noted, but the legal implications are staggering. You're suggesting a coordinated corporate conspiracy targeting minority-owned businesses. Not suggesting, Victoria corrected. Proving. She handed each board member a secure tablet. These contain the complete evidence package we provided to the FBI and SEC this morning. Emails, recordings, financial transfers, targeting assessments, all documenting AlphaTech's organized campaign. The room fell silent as the investors reviewed the material. Expressions hardened as they scrolled through damning evidence. This targeting assessment, Diaz noted with disgust. They literally score companies higher for elimination if the founders are female or minorities. Or both, Victoria added. MindScape received their highest threat rating because Zara checks multiple boxes they consider problematic. Young female black and brilliant Eliza Doherty said, looking at Zara with new appreciation. No wonder they're terrified of you. They're not terrified of me, Zara corrected. They're terrified of what I represent: innovation that doesn't need their permission. Success that doesn't follow their rules, and technology that makes their products obsolete. Isaiah, watching his daughter command the room, felt a bittersweet pride. Amara should be here to see this, he thought. She always knew Zara would change the world. There's one more piece you should see, Zara said, bringing up a new visualization. This is MindScape's user demographic data compared to Next Level's product, the educational software AlphaTech currently offers. The chart showed stark differences. MindScape's implementation spanned diverse socioeconomic backgrounds, with particularly strong results among traditionally underserved populations. Next Level's distribution was heavily skewed toward affluent districts. Their product costs less, Zara explained, but achieves results primarily with students who already have advantages. Stable learning environments, consistent access to technology, and standard cognitive processing patterns. Our technology costs more per license, but adapts to diverse learning needs. making it effective across all demographics. She switched to effectiveness metrics. With students identified as having learning differences, MindScape shows 83% improvement in outcomes, compared to 24% for Next Level's product. For students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, our improvement rate is 76% versus their 31%. So, it's not just about eliminating competition, Harlow concluded. It's about preventing a paradigm shift in educational access. Precisely, Zara confirmed. Our model demonstrates that educational technology can be both profitable and equitable. That challenges the fundamental business model AlphaTech has built in this sector. The question now, Harlow said, bringing the discussion back to business, is what happens next. Ms. Brooks, I believe you came here seeking investment in MindScape's expansion. Yes, Zara confirmed. But circumstances have changed. We're not just offering you an investment opportunity in educational software. We're offering you a chance to stand against corporate corruption and for true innovation. A noble sentiment, Harlow replied. But DNR Ventures has fiduciary responsibilities to our investors. How does backing MindScape fulfill those obligations? Zara smiled. I thought you might ask that. She brought up a new presentation. Let me show you exactly how MindScape plans to disrupt the $300 billion educational technology market while delivering both exceptional returns and social impact. For the next hour, she demonstrated MindScape's technology, the adaptive algorithms identifying learning patterns across cultures, the haptic feedback making education accessible to the blind, the AI tutors providing personalized instruction in 47 languages. The interface shifted for different learning styles, transforming from text-heavy presentations for verbal processors to dynamic visualizations for spatial thinkers to interactive simulations for kinesthetic learners. Each adaptation happened seamlessly, the system recognizing and responding to user patterns in real time. For students with dyslexia, Zara explained demonstrating a specialized interface. Traditional text appears unstable, letters seem to move or reverse. MindScape doesn't just enlarge text or change fonts. It introduces controlled motion that matches the student's natural visual processing pattern, effectively stabilizing their perception. She showed a before and after simulation of how text might appear to a dyslexic student, then how MindScape's adaptive display transformed the experience. Board members leaned forward, many experiencing for the first time how a learning difference actually manifested. For students with ADHD, she continued switching to another module. Maintaining focus isn't about willpower. It's about engagement thresholds. Our system introduces micro-challenges and variable reward patterns calibrated to individual attention spans, creating a state of productive focus without medication or punitive measures. The demonstration continued through various learning profiles, each showing remarkable improvements in engagement and comprehension through personalized adaptations. But the most powerful aspect isn't the technology itself, Zara emphasized. It's the data we generate. With over 3 million users, MindScape has created the world's largest repository of cognitive processing information. This allows us to continuously refine our algorithms and identify patterns previously unrecognized in educational research. She brought up market projections showing MindScape's growth trajectory. Our business model provides premium pricing in affluent markets, subsidizing implementation in underserved communities. This isn't just altruism, it's strategic market expansion. By establishing presence in developing educational markets, we're building brand loyalty in regions with the highest projected growth over the next decade. By the time she finished, the atmosphere in the room had transformed from skeptical interest to excited engagement. AlphaTech tried to stop us, Because we proved their monopoly is built on suppression, not superiority, Zara concluded. Fund us not just for ROI, but to send a message. Innovation belongs to everyone. Harlow looked around the table, reading the room. I believe we've seen enough for a decision. Ms. Brooks. Mr. Brooks, if you and your team would step outside for a few minutes, we'll discuss and call you back in. In the hallway, Isaiah hugged his daughter tightly. You were magnificent, Sparrow. Mom would be so proud. Do you think they'll fund us? Zara asked suddenly, just an 11-year-old seeking reassurance. After that presentation, they'd be fools not to, Gabriella declared. 10 minutes later, they were called back in. The board members stood as they entered, a sign of respect, rarely accorded even to adult entrepreneurs. Miss Brooks, Harlow began. We've reviewed everything: your technology, your business model, and the conspiracy against you. DNR Ventures commits $85 million to MindScape's expansion with an additional $30 million defense fund for any company facing similar attacks. Furthermore, we're establishing an industry consortium to combat these predatory practices. We'd like you to advise that initiative. The room erupted in applause, but Zara remained focused. This was bigger than money. This was validation, not just of her company, but of her mother's belief that excellence would eventually be recognized, regardless of the barriers placed in its path. Thank you, she said simply. We won't let you down. That evening, the story broke. The FBI announced Operation Breakthrough, a massive investigation into AlphaTech Ventures for racketeering, corporate espionage, and civil rights violations. 17 executives were indicted. The SEC froze $3.2 billion in assets. CNN's headline read, Silicon Valley Scandal Tech Giant Targeted Minority Businesses in Project Elimination. The accompanying image showed Zara Brooks leaving the Oakland FBI field office, head held high despite the circumstances. 6 months after Operation Breakthrough began, its impact reverberated throughout the technology industry. What started as an investigation into one company's practices had expanded into a comprehensive examination of how innovation was funded, developed, and brought to market in America. The most visible changes came in venture capital. Major firms implemented transparent evaluation criteria, blind initial application reviews, and diverse investment committees. Limited partners, the pension funds, endowments, and family offices that provide capital to venture funds, began requiring diversity metrics and anti-discrimination policies as funding conditions. Less visible, but equally significant, were the structural reforms within technology companies themselves. Employee whistleblower protections strengthened. Ethics committees gained real authority. Compensation structures evolved to reward inclusive practices rather than just financial outcomes. Zara Brooks, now 12, found herself in an unexpected position of influence. The Inclusive Innovation Alliance she had helped establish had grown to include over 300 companies, investors, and advocacy organizations committed to transforming industry practices. At the Detroit Community Innovation Center, Zara addressed a packed auditorium of educators, students, and technology leaders. The live stream reached millions worldwide. The center itself represented Detroit's evolution, a former automotive factory in the city's Midtown district, repurposed into a hub for technology education and entrepreneurship. Its exposed brick walls and industrial windows preserved the city's manufacturing heritage while housing cutting-edge educational facilities. 6 months ago, I was removed from an airplane because someone couldn't believe a black girl belonged in first class. She began immediately capturing the audience's attention. Today I'm here to tell you that incident wasn't about one seat or one flight. It was about who gets to occupy spaces of privilege and power in our society. She wore her signature blazer, professional, yet unmistakably youthful, as she outlined MindScape's newest initiatives: expanded language support, offline functionality for regions with limited connectivity, and specialized modules for students with rare learning differences. MindScape now operates in 47 countries, 14,000 schools, reaching 4.7 million students, Zara reported. But numbers only tell part of the story. The real impact is measured in individual transformations. The dyslexic student who discovers she's not slow, but simply processes information differently. The autistic child who finally finds educational materials that speak his language. The rural community where children access advanced learning despite limited resources. She demonstrated MindScape's newest interface, which could switch seamlessly between different cognitive processing modes. For visual learners, concepts appeared as interactive diagrams. For auditory processors, the same content presented through narrative explanation. For kinesthetic learners, physical interaction with the tablet created tangible understanding of abstract concepts. Traditional education asks students to adapt to a standardized approach, Zara explained. MindScape reverses that relationship. The technology adapts to the student. This isn't just about accessibility for those with diagnosed learning differences. It's about recognizing that every mind processes information uniquely. She demonstrated MindScape's newest breakthrough AI that could identify learning disabilities before traditional testing, providing early intervention that could change a child's entire trajectory. The technology would be provided free to any school with over 40% low-income students. The system used pattern recognition to identify subtle indicators of processing differences, not through standardized testing, but by analyzing how students approached learning tasks. It could distinguish between attention issues, processing variations, and comprehension challenges, providing educators with specific recommendations for supporting each child's learning journey. This technology doesn't just identify differences, Zara emphasized. It reframes them as variations rather than deficits. The goal isn't to fix children, but to provide them with tools that match their cognitive style. AlphaTech valued MindScape at $800 million when they tried to buy us, Zara noted. Today, we're valued at $4.2 billion, the difference. We grew by lifting others, not stepping on them. During the question and answer session, a 9-year-old girl raised her hand. I want to create technology like you, but I'm scared of people who might try to stop me. Zara smiled warmly. Fear is data telling you something matters. Use it to prepare, not retreat. They'll question your age, race, gender, your right to innovate. Let your code answer. Let success speak. And when they try to remove you from your seat, remember, you don't need permission to fly. The audience erupted in applause, many rising to their feet. 5 years after Flight 738, MindScape's technology reached 108 million students globally. The company had evolved from an educational platform into a comprehensive ecosystem, supporting diverse learning needs across contexts from early childhood through professional development. Its adaptive approach had transformed how education technology was designed, implemented, and evaluated worldwide. Zara Brooks, now 16 and a sophomore at MIT, balanced her academic pursuits with continued leadership of MindScape's strategic direction. While the company's day-to-day operations were managed by a seasoned executive team, led by Gabriela Ramirez, Zara remained the visionary force behind its innovation pipeline, identifying new applications for its core adaptive technologies. Her MIT dorm room reflected this dual existence. One wall featured typical college decorations, photos with friends' event flyers, academic schedules. The opposite wall displayed MindScape's global impact map, tracking implementations across continents. Her desk held textbooks alongside corporate strategy documents. And prominently displayed on her bulletin board were 3 treasured items: her mother's letter, a photo from Flight 738's first-class cabin, and a sticky note with a simple reminder, "You don't need permission to fly." Below it, she'd added a new line, "But once you're flying, pull others up with you." This philosophy guided both her personal and professional choices. At MIT, she mentored younger students from underrepresented backgrounds, helping them navigate academic and social challenges. Through MindScape, she championed initiatives making advanced educational tools available to communities traditionally excluded from technological innovation. The most significant of these was the Global Access Program, which provided MindScape's platform free to schools in regions with limited resources. Unlike traditional corporate philanthropy, the program included comprehensive support teacher training, technical infrastructure, ongoing implementation assistance, ensuring that the technology truly served local educational needs rather than imposing external approaches. Zara Brooks oversaw this program while continuing to guide MindScape's overall governance. His engineering background proved invaluable in addressing the technical challenges of deploying advanced educational technology in regions with limited connectivity and infrastructure. More importantly, his commitment to genuine partnership rather than paternalistic charity established a model for responsible global technology implementation. On a crisp autumn morning, Zara and Isaiah returned to Detroit Metropolitan Airport, the departure point for Flight 738 5 years earlier. They weren't traveling this time, but attending the launch of a new initiative, the MindScape Innovation Hub, a partnership with the airport, providing educational activities for young travelers and showcasing technology created by local students. "Full circle," Isaiah remarked, as they watched children interacting with learning stations throughout the terminal. From being questioned about belonging here to transforming the space itself. Zara nodded, observing a young girl enthusiastically explaining her science project to passing travelers. That's how change happens, not just removing barriers, but creating new possibilities in their place. The hub represented MindScape's evolving approach to community engagement. Rather than simply providing technology, the company created platforms for community members to develop and showcase their own innovations. This approach recognized that meaningful inclusion required not just access to existing tools, but opportunities to create new ones. As they toured the installation, Zara was approached by an airport employee, a woman in her 50s with a supervisor badge reading Martinez. "Miss Brooks, I'm Olivia Martinez. We met 5 years ago. I was the flight attendant on your flight to San Francisco." Her expression conveyed genuine remorse. "I've wanted to apologize for a long time. The way I treated you was inexcusable." Zara took a moment to place the memory. So much had happened since that day. "You were doing your job as you understood it. Then," she finally replied, neither accusatory nor dismissive. "No." Olivia shook her head firmly. "I was making assumptions based on how you looked. After everything that happened, the investigation, the changes at the airline, I had to confront that reality. I've spent the past 4 years working on our company's Passenger Respect initiative, trying to ensure no one else experiences what you did." This unexpected encounter embodied the complex legacy of that pivotal flight. While the immediate impact had been traumatic, the ripple effects had created opportunities for genuine reflection and transformation, not just at institutional levels, but within individuals whose actions had perpetuated exclusionary patterns. Later that day, Zara addressed a gathering of high school students participating in the Innovation Hub's mentorship program. Most came from Detroit neighborhoods with limited educational resources, their talents often overlooked by traditional academic metrics. The program paired them with technology professionals while providing equipment guidance and platforms to develop their ideas. 5 years ago, someone tried to tell me I didn't belong in a seat I had rightfully purchased, Zara told the students. Today, that moment seems distant, almost belonging to another person's life. But I share it because many of you have faced similar moments when others questioned your presence in spaces you earned through merit and hard work. She described how that confrontation had expanded from a personal incident into a movement challenging entrenched patterns of exclusion in technology development and investment. The question isn't whether you'll face obstacles based on who you are, she acknowledged, but how you'll respond when those obstacles appear. A girl in the front row raised her hand. But you were already rich and had a company. What about those of us starting with nothing? A fair question. Zara nodded. I had advantages, many don't. A supportive father, financial resources, early recognition of my abilities. But MindScape exists because my mother, a public school teacher from this city, believed education should adapt to students, rather than forcing students to adapt to rigid educational models. That vision came from her experience teaching children whose brilliance went unrecognized because it didn't fit standard metrics. She gestured to the diverse group before her. Your perspectives, shaped by experiences I haven't had, are precisely what technology development needs. The challenges you've faced give you insights others lack. The solutions you envision address needs others might never recognize. The Detroit Educational Innovation Conference vibrated with energy as educators, technologists, and students from around the world gathered to explore the future of learning. At its center stood Zara Brooks, now 17, whose journey from disputed airline passenger to global education innovator had inspired many in attendance. When I think about that day on Flight 738, Zara told the rapt audience, I realize it wasn't really about a seat. It was about who gets to occupy spaces of privilege and power in our society. Who gets to innovate? Who gets to define problems worth solving? Who gets to determine solutions worth implementing? She paused, looking out at the diverse faces before her young innovators, who might once have been told their ideas didn't matter. Educators who had embraced new approaches to learning, investors who had expanded their definition of promising founders. The past 6 years have shown us that when we expand who participates in creating technology, we expand what that technology can accomplish. This isn't charity or social justice, though those matter deeply. It's about unlocking human potential that would otherwise remain untapped. Behind her screens displayed MindScape's global impact. 120 million students across 82 countries, learning in ways tailored to their unique cognitive patterns. More significant than these numbers were the individual transformations, children discovering their capabilities, teachers finding new ways to connect with students, communities developing their own educational innovations. As Zara concluded her address, she shared a final reflection. My mother taught me that true education meets learners where they are, rather than demanding conformity to rigid systems. That principle applies equally to technology, to investment, to opportunity itself. When we create systems flexible enough to recognize and nurture diverse forms of brilliance, we all benefit from the innovations that emerge. The standing ovation that followed wasn't just for Zara, but for the movement she represented, a fundamental shift in how innovation was funded, developed, and implemented. What had begun with one child refusing to surrender her rightful seat had evolved into a transformation affecting millions of lives across contexts, from education to healthcare to environmental sustainability. As Isaiah watched from the side of the stage, he thought about how far they had come and how much further they still intended to go. The journey hadn't been easy. They had faced resistance, setbacks, moments of doubt, but the direction remained clear toward a world where opportunity reflected merit rather than privilege, where technology served human diversity rather than demanding conformity. That vision, first articulated by Zara Brooks in a Detroit classroom years ago, now animated a global movement, and at its heart stood her daughter, who had learned through both triumph and struggle that changing the world didn't require permission, only the courage to claim your rightful place and the generosity to ensure others could claim theirs too. If Zara's story moved you today, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring true stories of courage and transformation. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that they don't need permission to claim their rightful seat at the table. Has someone ever questioned your right to be somewhere you belonged? Tell us your story in the comments below. Together we can change who gets to innovate, create, and lead in our world. Thank you for watching. And remember, your voice matters, your ideas matter, and your seat is waiting for you.